Professional chess master Rats. I'm here at ICC to analyze a game from Team 4545 League. This was selected Game of the Week for Week 3 in team event number 56. And as agreed, I'm making a video of every game that's selected Game of the Week. And this particular tournament, we have a bonus. My good friend Nh4, who hails from Finland, is providing a written analysis of the games, and then I do the video. And at the end of this, just like with the other ones, I'll bring up what Nh4 had to say. I haven't looked at it yet. I've got it copied and saved to a text file. I'll bring it up and see if we agree or disagree. Probably we're both going to make mistakes, but who knows, you know. We can only analyze what we can see. If we don't see what happens, that's how we lose games. You know, you can just do the best you can, and if your opponent finds a flaw in your plan, you're going to lose, and you learn something from it. Okay, let's have a look at this. And this, I want to preface this with a couple things. This is a very interesting game, and as I have a lot of instructional value in my videos that I make, and I cater to all ratings, let's just stop a moment and look at the ratings we have here. 2114 versus 2250. Now, I don't know what the true over-the-board ratings of these players is. Internet ratings are a little different than actual real-life chess ratings, but let's just make an assumption these are accurate. Now, there's always some variance, and I'm going to allow for that variance. So either one could be plus or minus 200 points, okay? So myself spending time over the board rated 2200 from 1981 till 1996, when I had to stop playing over the board chess due to life circumstances. I have a pretty good idea how players of all ratings play. I've recently returned, moved out of the middle of nowhere, close to Los Angeles, and I've been able to resume my chess activities, and I'm happy to say I'm maintaining my 2200 rating, or right close to it. I just dropped a few points, but I'm basically performing at basically a 2200 performance rating ever since. A return just after a few events. We'll see how it goes. But I'm getting back in the swing of things, and I think all this analysis I've been doing over the last 16 years, I certainly wasn't absent from chess by any means. But anyway, I've learned a lot, and I'm here to share my knowledge with the world. So let's basically, as I say, things I know about players of these rating classes, I can bring this into the video, offer this and indicate certain things and trends to look for. If you're at or near these levels, as I said, we're going to assume the lowest is like around 1900. So anybody rated in the vicinity of 1900 up to 2100, this could fit fine into what we're looking for. If you're trying to become a 1900 player, this will give you some ideas. And the same with if you're a 2100 player playing a 2200 player, what's the difference? What makes you lose and him win? Why didn't you hold a draw? Okay, so anyway, it's a very, very interesting game, and we'll let it unfold. Okay, so this is basically, I guess they call it the London system, when Black's putting his queen's bishop in Old English descriptive notation. We call that king bishop 4. Okay, that's the notation I learned. If you don't know it, you need to learn it, because there's a lot of great chess literature written in English descriptive notation. And sometimes it's easier to use English descriptive notation to point to a particular square. Like if I say both sides are trying to control king 5, I don't have to stop and say e4 and e5. But anyway, it basically leads to quiet games, and we'll just kind of go through the motions here. There's going into divergences, too many divergences is kind of beyond the point of the video. We could always, I could make a 25-hour video of this real easily if I could stay awake that long, and who's going to watch it? I'm not. So a lot of stuff and possible variations we don't need to cover. If you've watched my videos, you know my pattern here. Okay, so both sides are doing their proper thing. They're developing. It doesn't matter where they put them right now, as long as they're not putting them on bad squares, and both sides are doing exactly what they have to do. And c4 is common, White's grabbing a little space, giving the queen a little mobility. Okay. Now I guess it's a book move. It's a book theme often used against that London bishop from both sides. I'm going to come out right front now and here and say, don't do this, okay? It's basically a waste of time. The position is equal already. You don't need to do it. Let's put this knight back here. What does white need to do? White needs to develop, okay? See these three guys I circled? They're screaming to get in the game, okay? The quicker you get them in the game, the better your chances are later. If something happens in your favor in a few moves and these guys are still sitting at home, they're not going to be able to help, okay? This is not going to win. This move is not going to win the game. But the idea with this move is to secure the bishop pair, and a lot of this goes back to the old writings that I grew up with, Fred Reinfeldt and Irving Chernev and Al Horowitz, and they're always talking about bishops are worth more than knights. Okay, so a lot of people, and I've known a lot of people that just, if they saw they could trade their knight for a bishop, they would do it in a heartbeat. But my counter to this is something I say. I often quote in a lot of my videos this famous game, and I have it in my library here in ICC. It's game number 158. It's the old classic game, Stoltz versus Kashtan, The Hague, 1928. That was the Olympics. And in that game, and it's just about in every ending anthology you could name, Averbach, Basic Chess Endings, and so forth, Sharevsky's book, Sharon series. It basically shows how how the bishop beats the knight in the ending. And I often ask people that like to trade their bishops for knights, how many times did you win an ending based on that game? And they say, I never did. Okay, so case closed. Okay, you don't need to chase your opponent's bishops for knights. And often what happens as a result, in just about any opening you want to name, whenever a bishop is exchanged for the knight, it usually comes at a loss of tempo for the player who is securing the bishop pair. Okay, it doesn't matter what opening it is. Here you can see it. This is what's going to happen. He's going to lose a couple tempos grabbing that bishop. Okay, the Chigorin defense to the Queen's Gambit decline. There's another perfect example. White will often acquire both bishops. Black will have two knights. White will have two bishops. And Nimzo Indian defense. There's another one where black will part with the bishop pair. White's often playing a3, spending a move to get that bishop to exchange on c3. So, what's better than grabbing bishops? Development. Okay, let the bishop sit. Unless you're going to win your game like Kashtan did again in The Hague, 1928. Don't bother. How did he win it? Well, you can look at you look at that game at your leisure. Essentially, the plan is simple. Use the bishop and knight to force entry points with the king into the position, force some weaknesses, go in there, grab a pawn, and then make a pass pawn and use the long-range bishop to lose a tempo when needed, and deflect the enemy king over to the other side of the board to watch the pawn, then go to the other side of the board and win another pawn, and you win the game. Okay, how many times did you win a game like that? I did once myself, and I did it when I had an adjourned game and I had to figure out what to do. When was that? Back in 1988. Went home, got my Averbach series books out, Bishop versus Knight, looked it up, spent a lot of time, and came back and won the game. Okay, now, so end of story. You don't need to trade your knights for bishops in the opening, and we'll see the price White pays for this here in a moment. Okay, and here's the price White's paying. White has weakened his king side. Okay, and now he takes it. Now it's true Black has a double pawn, and some of us say, well, good, we've got a double pawn. We're doing great. Well, at the same time, you've also got this open file you're giving your opponent. Okay, but the white king side is weak, and this is going to tell when the game gets decisive. It's not a problem right now, but it can be a problem that White needs to be aware of. And once again, this is what separates the ratings. Whether it's 2114 versus 2250 or 1914 versus 2050. This is what will separate the ratings and why the higher rated player will win if they know what to do. And we'll get to that, and we'll see some more reasons why this happens in a little bit. Okay, so White develops his queen. That's good. Black castles. That's good. He's saying I don't really need that H file. And white's trying to open up the center now, but black is ahead in development. Yeah, black's ahead because all he needs to do is develop his queen, and white still has this rook and bishop at home. And one thing I've pointed out in countless league videos I've made, watch these games and see how long one or both sides leave their queen rook and queen bishop on their original square. And sometimes I've seen them never get into play, which means that this side is giving odds of a rook and a bishop, or sometimes they don't get into play until like move 25. Well, you can't have that. The rest of your army can't fight the whole war themselves. And I just give the simple response, which is good to all rating levels. Chess is a game of war. If you're only going to send a few of your troops out and leave the others at home, the guys you're sending out are going to get overwhelmed and pushed back and slaughtered, and the guys at home aren't going to be in any kind of decent defensive position to do anything good for you. Okay, so but this is fine what white's doing. He only has the one weakness, the weakness in his pawn structure on the king side. So white's not losing this by any means, but he's reducing his winning chances, even with the two bishops. Okay, so now that the position is clarified a little bit, let's talk about that for the advanced strategy. If white can get down to an ending, that means trade queens, trade both rooks. Then he can use his two bishops at their maximum potential. Well, you know what? How are you going to trade those queens and rooks? That's a good question. That's a long way off. Okay, and the only way to trade them off is to open up some lines, and there are none open at the moment. Okay, really, that you can get some wholesale exchanges on. So that leaves white one other choice. Use his queen and two rooks and keep them on the board. So this is an alternative to trying to play for the winning ending, trading everything down. You have to recognize, well, I'm not going to trade everything down easily. I've got to use what I've got. And since he has to use what he's got, here's these guys we're talking about, okay? They're not in the game, and they need to get in the game. Let's see what black does. Okay, black just continues to improve his position and gains the tempo on the queen. The queen backs up, and then black develops his queen. Now, black's looking better here for a number of reasons. The only weakness in black's position is the double pawns, and there's no way in this position white can exploit that. Okay, so the double pawns are really not a weakness at all. Black has his rooks connected. White doesn't. White has one potential way to open up this game, and we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. We'll look at some ideas behind it. The only way to open up this game is to get this pawn pushed up to d5, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Not yet. Okay, so white plays b3, and this is good. He's trying to find a good diagonal for the bishop, and if used in conjunction with d5, then suddenly this bishop, if it goes to b2, will have an active diagonal. But still, white's behind in development, and black just swings another rook to the open file, and there's no way really white's going to get anywhere here. Now, this is interesting. I might not have played this move myself. My main candidate move would be, logical would be to double up my rooks, because there's an open file, and I want to forestall this pawn push. But what black does is fine. Black has a lot of luxuries in this position simply because, as I said, he has no weaknesses. So this is fine. It's not going to mean the difference between a win or a draw. They're both playable moves, and we can't say black played a worse move or not, because objectively there's nothing wrong with what he's doing. Okay, so white swings this over. Now he's getting closer to playing d5, but black stops and drives the white king over in the corner, and now white's threatening to, I guess, to trap that bishop, so black needs to get it out of there. So he gets it out with a gain of tempo, and black has achieved something. He's driven the king over the corner. If it comes down to an ending, white might find that his king being in the corner is not useful to him at all. because it's going to take him one move to get active. And so I like black strategy. There's nothing wrong with it. I just said my main inclination would have been to double rooks. But here they come. They're going to get doubled. So now we've reached a position where perhaps white can consider d5. Okay, let's talk about that for a second. What does d5 do? Well, as I said earlier, if white wants to go for an ending where his bishop will beat the knight, he's got to open up some lines so the queens and rooks can be traded. So let's just examine what happens if d5. Now, I don't know if these are the best moves. We'll just examine a couple of things and just see what happens. Now, if black takes with the knight, now black doesn't have to take with the knight, but if black takes with the knight, white suddenly has to give up his bishop pair if he wants to open up more lines. Now he doesn't have to, but we'll talk about both positions here for a second. One thing this does do is it does give black an isolated pawn. Black doesn't have to take with a rook; he can take it with the pawn. And now potentially there's a target. Now this looks kind of good for white at first glance. Let's see. I do all my videos pretty much unrehearsed. I like to call them as I see them, and if I make a one move mistake and you find it, good job. You know, that's the whole objective of these videos. I don't have to present a perfect video. Just like you don't have to play a perfect game of chess. We don't need to know what the best moves are in a position. We need to understand the logic behind them, and that's what my training does. Okay, so white's not threatening to win this pawn, but he is maybe planning to put the queen on d4 and threaten a mate. Now black can deal with that, but the game is still relatively even. It's black's move. I wouldn't advocate putting a pawn on a black square yet to safeguard that. I would consider some kind of developing move if one exists. How can we improve the position? This rook is tied down. Just candidate moves. Queen. Whoop. Wrong arrow. Queen to a5 will threaten this pawn, although it may not be something that white wants to take. Let's just try it. Okay, now f6. Now we're getting ready to play here. The queen a5 may not be. Whoop. Whoop, whoop, whoop. I hung a piece. See, I miss one movers all the time. It's my flaw in chess. Okay, give me a 20 move combination, I'm fine. One mover, I'm hopeless. Okay, let's put the rook here. Okay, now we're forking a couple things. Does black want to give that pawn up? He might get some counterplay here. See, you know, there's always something here. Queen can come back here, and then black wins. Yeah, there's definitely some tricks and stuff that you have to prepare for, and that's what you do when you evaluate a game over the board. You get all these possibilities. So eventually, a d5 break will give white some chances, and that's what I wanted to talk about. But you notice in this d5 break, white had to give up the bishop pair. Okay, he gave it up, and if his strategy doesn't work, if he doesn't find something, his king is going to be exposed in the ending, and that could mean the whole difference between a win and a draw. I was just looking at a game of Fischer's today from the Capablanca Memorial back in 1965. I can't remember which game. It's not important, but it was one of the games he drew. I think it was a Marshall attack. Yeah, it was. I didn't look at the whole game. I just looked at the book and saw the ending. And his opponent missed a chance to get the better game. Fischer was fighting for equality, and finally, as the commentators said something to the effect that although white's a pawn ahead, black's queen is active, and the white king is in danger from a lot of checks, and it was agreed drawn shortly after the adjournment resumed. So, you know, that's again one of the drawbacks of weakening your pawn structure, and the net result was white didn't have the bishop pair. Okay, so and once again, like I say, what I said earlier, how many times do you win a game the way Cashden beat Stoltz with the bishop and the knight versus the knight? Well, the answer is you don't. Here's one of the reasons why. Now, there were obviously other variations. Some of them kind of go beyond the scope of this. There's some that maybe white doesn't isolate the pawn, but then black has a potential queenside pawn majority, which can give him some winning chances at the ending. They always say if you castle one side and have a pawn majority on the other side, I had books telling me 40 some years ago that would give you a clear advantage. Well, actually, it just gives you winning chances, because if you get an outside pass pawn, you can deflect the enemy pieces over there to watch it while you go wreak havoc on the other side of the board. Okay, particularly if it gets down to a king and pawn ending, then the enemy, your enemy king is stuck defending it, and well, your opponent's going over there to collect that pawn. He's getting farther and farther away from the rest of his pawns, and your king goes in and feasts. And in a position like this, with the white pawns weak, that king's going to get in pretty quick. Okay, so there are certain positions where having that queenside pawn majority would give black the winning chances. So white has to be careful that that doesn't happen. But at some point, he needs to do a d5 break, and I just wanted to show it at the earliest opportunity. Now, black doesn't have to take with the knight, but you see, if white doesn't part with the bishop, black's got that majority. And black also has the option of taking with this pawn. Okay, and that opens up a different file. And like I say, I can't solve everything in a video. The objective of making a video is to get you to put your thinking cap on and analyze the position, because the only way you get better is if you're sitting down and analyzing a game. If I show you the best moves, what do you learn? You don't learn anything. You learn by figuring things out. I just kind of get you going on this and give some basic instructional value. And I like to tell the tale of when I was back in the 8th grade, my future sister-in-law, my sister ended up marrying his brother. I knew her since 1st grade, and I was sharper in math than she was, and we had a class together, and she was always asked me for the answers during tests, and I would give them to her. We were both not doing the right thing, but yeah, she was my friend forever, so I'd do it. But she passed the class, but what did she learn about math? So I don't want to show you all the best moves. You got to find them yourself. You got to learn to think for yourself. Okay, so white doesn't play d5 yet. I just wanted to illustrate a lot of these principles can change every move. And here, white's probably doing one correct thing that I didn't mention. I didn't mention because I wanted to show the first chance to play d5. White's completing his development and getting ready to play d5. And then black goes in. This is a good move. It makes white wonder, is he going to grab that pawn? Can make white burn some clock time. Maybe black doesn't want to take that pawn. He probably doesn't. I can just see right now, rook a1, let him have it. You're going to trap the queens. Let's see what white does. So he just chases the queen to where it wants to go. But I guess if he doesn't, black may consider dropping this bishop back to b8 and putting the queen back on c7, threatening a mate down here. Okay, so, but I'm not saying it's the worst move. But how can white improve his position here? And that's kind of the whole key. And it comes back to what I was saying earlier about what separates players when they're rated 100 rating points apart. And it doesn't matter, again, if they're 1900 or if they're 2200. If there's about a 100-point rating difference, what separates them? And what separates them is one factor is the number of precise moves that they make. And black's move is good because he's planning to looks like to me to play bishop b8 and queen c7. There's no threat on the pawn. But what else can white do here? I'm assuming d5 it doesn't work. You guys can analyze it on your own if you like. I'd spend all day on it. But white, in a way, had a decent strategy here to back up bishop c3. And the decent strategy is simple. White has to admit that he's not going anywhere. He doesn't have winning chances. And unfortunately, players at this rating level just can't seem to admit that. Now, I'm not saying to play for a draw. You know, you don't just say, hey, want to draw? Because chances are your opponent, if he's higher rated than you, doesn't want to take a draw. He wants to play on. But what happens at this rating level that I've noticed constantly, I noticed it 30 years ago, I noticed this last weekend. Your opponent gets impatient. He's going to try to win. And this is a difficult position for White to play for a win from. Okay? Why? Because he's got a weakness on his king side, and Black is fully covered everywhere else. So White doesn't have much to do here. But what White can do is just repeat the position. It's this simple. Okay? Shuffle the pieces around. Make sure that your opponent doesn't mate you. If White does this, Black will not win the game unless White blunders, because White only has one weakness: his pawn structure on the king side. But if you play well, if you adopt this strategy, you're gonna be fine. Okay? But White's going to create some weaknesses here in a moment, and we'll see. Also, I want to draw attention to one other thing I didn't yet. Look at the time. Okay? Black has gained time on this clock. I mean, this is remarkable. This is a pretty deep position, and 25 moves are in, and Black has gained time. That means he's not using all his reflection time, and he's completely equalized the position and stands slightly better, even with the knight versus the bishop, simply because White's got a weakness and he doesn't. You know, it's not much of an advantage, but it basically means Black can try for a win here. And it looks like maybe I was suggesting dropping the bishop back and getting the queen over. We can still try to do that if White will let us. But White's going to get impatient here. Let's revert to the main line and see what happens. Okay, there's bishop a1. Okay, that's fine. I put it on b2. a1's fine. He's biding time. And here's the idea. I would have gone back to b8 simply because why seal off this file? Okay, but Black's going to enter this combination soon, which is totally remarkable, and he did it in hardly any time at all. I mean, it's just amazing, the skill level here. Okay, so White triples on the open file. This all makes perfect sense. And now, I guess Black didn't want to trade queens, and I wouldn't either. Let's keep it on the board. Let's tie this White down to defending this pawn. There's a threat on this pawn. Knight takes, right? White's got to deal with that. He does. Gets his king back a little closer. So, you know, so far White's doing okay. This is interesting. Maybe Black's going to try and get over to the rook file and try and operate there. Very interesting move. But here's the point. This is where White goes wrong with b4. Okay? Black can't do anything here. Okay? If White's careful, Black cannot win this position. But b4 is a mistake. Why? Well, because there's a lot of reasons. Number one, it fixes this pawn on the color of the black bishop. Okay? If you somehow get to an ending, you don't want your pawns on the color of your opponent's bishops. They're weak. And especially if White ends up trading this light squared bishop for this knight, Black would have the better bishop in the ending. Now, White's kingside pawns are fine in that respect, but we don't want to give Black a potential target. And that pawn on b4 is a potential target. Also, it does one other critical thing here. It weakens the c4 square. Now, you might look at that and say, how's Black going to attack it? Well, he will, and you'll see. He can't attack it with his pieces, but he can attack it with his pawns. And that makes all the difference. b4, in my opinion, has created the second weakness in the White position, and Black has a strategically won game at this point. He just has to find the way to do it. Okay? And what are the two weaknesses? Well, objectively, there's three. But c4 is the main one. Can I get rid of these circles? Yeah, if I go back and up. Here we go. Okay, c4 is the one weakness, and the other weakness is the dark squares. Okay, and you need two weaknesses to win, and I think there they are. So how do you do something like this? Well, as I said, you do something with your pawn, and black's going to get ready to do this in a moment. So white shuffles back, and there it comes. Now, what this does is, if white had a pawn on b3, he's going to he can keep a pawn on c4. Now he cannot keep a pawn on c4, and that's the whole difference. And losing that pawn on c4 does two things. You lose control of d5, which is, as I've explained earlier, is the break you want to try for. And I showed some of the ideas behind those already. Okay, so it takes away that, plus it gives the d5 square in turn to black. Now suddenly a square that white was key to white breaking open this position has suddenly crossed over to enemy hands. So white has to deal with this. If white plays takes here and takes here, like I say, black has control of the square now. And look at this bishop. It's all shut in behind pawns. So white's strategy with b4 has failed him. It's that simple. So white finds a remedy. Now he plays d5, and it looks good. I mean, the way it follows up, it looks good. It's just that black comes up with something I think is incredible. Now white's taking his time here, and black isn't, which makes this just utter amazing. Okay. Black now takes this pawn, and white has this move. And this is interesting, but it comes back to what I was saying earlier, that often a player will can't get any headway in a position, will try to force things, and that's kind of what b4 did. White is now continuing trying to force things. He didn't have any kind of a tangible advantage. Now, again, if white's playing somebody rated 1700, this strategy can often work, but it will bite you when you're playing somebody much stronger than you. So the question is, do we do this kind of strategy at all? Well, the only place for it is in blitz, because that's all impulsive moves, and you're trying to set problems for your opponent to get him to consume clock time. But white gets credit for a lot of imagination here. He's got some interesting ideas. What does black do? For instance, white's threatening to take this pawn and be piled up on this bishop. Okay, that's the threat. If it's white's move, and it isn't, just b takes c6 looks pretty good. You're going to undermine this bishop, and here, let's just burn a move, and I'll show you. Okay. Now you have to give up your queen, but I think white's doing fine here. Let's see. He should have more than a rook and a bishop. Did I misdo the math? No, you've given up too much here. I'm sorry. Okay, so white doesn't have as big as a threat of as I thought. See, sometimes I can't count. I lost a game recently where I didn't count pieces when the mass exchange. Even though I covered it twice, came up a piece down. Oh well. Okay, but still, the file is opening up. Let's just, what are you going to do if you have to take this pawn? You're going to drop a piece. Well, this bishop is now pinned. White can go find something else to do. Let's go attack this pawn and keep the pin on this bishop. There's a lot of nuisance value here for white. Black has to be careful. Just because I misanalyze something doesn't take anything away from it. White's got some chances here, but like I say, the fly in the ointment is if your opponent plays perfectly, it blows up on you, and that's what's going to happen. Okay, so like I say, it's got some ideas. There's the threat, and the next idea is there's three ways to take this pawn. Let's cover. Whoops, something's wrong. Oh, I got to take a6 back. Okay, there's three ways to take this pawn, both pawns in the knight. Let's just take a quick look at the main idea. And the main idea is to win a piece. Okay, now black can play knight e4. Oops, knight e4, and he can drop his queen back. Either one's fine. But to kind of, frame for the position, let's just talk about this real quick. Black has 7 pawns, white has 4. Now, they teach us that that's even, but in this position it isn't really even. The pawns aren't advanced, and it's going to be kind of hard for them to advance. White's got them kind of blockaded. This e6 pawn needs to run at some point, and d5 is covered. Even though black now controls the square and took it from white, black can't really get his pawns going. Okay. In the long run, I think this kind of strategy is going to fail. The side with the piece has the extra piece, and it's going to be a long grind-out game, and you have to play it carefully. There will be some pressure on the lower-rated player to find the right moves, but I think it's a risky strategy to risk potential losing chances. But the whole point is black doesn't have losing chances if he plays it correctly, and as we will see. But white's looking... couldn't have expected what happened. Okay, he couldn't have expected what happened. Like I say, this game is amazing. So what white did makes perfect sense. Unfortunately, black plays a perfect game from here on out, and it's similar with the other pawn takes. But what black plays is knight takes d5, and here he's doing this after only. Let's see. His clock went down a minute and 6 seconds, so he spent about not quite 2 minutes on this move, and you're about to see approximately a 10-move combination. So the fact that black found this so quickly is just a good tribute to his tactical abilities. Now, one thing about analyzing 10 moves deep is if a lot of moves are forced, it certainly makes it easier, and some of these moves are forced, as we will see. But I'm still impressed by the fact that he solved all these problems. So if you're white, you have to be optimistic, because it looks like white's going to win some material here. I'll show you. Okay, he goes ahead with his g5 plan, and then surprise! Here comes this move, bishop f4. Probably white didn't expect that move. So black had to have this prepared from the moment white played rook d4 or even d5. He had to be preparing this. So rook takes. Like I say, now these are easy to analyze because there's only a limited number of recaptures. If black takes with the queen, white's going to trade queens and come out smelling like a rose. But that doesn't happen. So here we now see the first key position that black had to recognize. Black is threatening a mate in 1. How does white stop it? Okay, there's no way to guard the bishop on g2. It's a goner. Okay, so the king runs here. So if you're analyzing this out, it's relatively easy to see. Okay, and now naturally this move is forced, but now you've got to continue the attack, although you do have your piece back. But there's a rook hanging on c8 that's got to be dealt with. How do we do that? Well, he goes and threatens mate in 1. So now white's got to deal with that. How does he do it? If you bring the queen back to d2, unfortunately you're taking away a flight square from the king, and black mates in 1 move with queen h1. Okay, so once again white must run his king, just like he had to run from g1. He's got to run over here. And here comes the next remarkable tactical move. Let's see, black is ahead 3 pawns. Well, queen d3 check certainly would force the queens off. Nothing wrong with that. But black comes up with another fine move. Let's see, how much time does he take on it? 42-33. So he spends about 4 minutes and finds this move. And now there's new threats. We'll see what they are. But white has a rook on the take, but can he take it? C3 is going to get lost. Let's see. So white does take it. and then grabs this, and the attack continues. And why is this attack working? It goes back to what I said in the opening. White weakened his kingside pawn structure. This will not happen had White not grabbed that bishop. Okay, so he had the bishop pair until just a moment, until he won the material on c8, won the exchange of the quality as it's known in Europe. It didn't do him any good, and this move was unnecessary. You'll see. Well, I'll explain why. Nothing wrong with it. Just go back and check, and now Black comes here. He could have done that 2 moves ago, and White's in serious trouble here. The immediate threat is queen takes d1 mate, and the secondary threat is queen h1 mate. What is poor White to do? That's a good question. Well, if you look down in the box below the chat window, it says White resigns. So let's just review this combination again. It happened, as I said, because White played a faulty strategy, and it might have worked against somebody rated 1800. There's a good chance it would, but the problem is a player 2250 will find these things, especially if your opponent's a grandmaster. You know he's going to find it. Okay, so how did White get a disaster so quickly from this position when he only had the one weakness? Well, the position opened up, and Black was able to give up material because of the weaknesses on the king side. Okay, so here's the key point. Let's count the combination. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So a 6-move combination from there in what, 2 minutes? That's impressive. Okay, so this one took what, 4 minutes, but the rest is easy. So it's just a remarkable game on Black's part. Okay, excuse me. I've been fighting a sneeze for about the last 20 minutes, and it finally came. So let's do this. Let's see what N4 has to say. And I'm going to bring this over, even though it covers the board. I find it's easier. Okay. I vote this game as Game of the Week because there was proper use of weak squares, harmony between pieces, and also a well-spotted and tactical mate combination. The game went to kind of a Slav defense. White had more space and more dominant center, but Black had fast possibility to crash the center with thematic c5 or e5. Difference was, of course, the fianchetto bishop g2 and some weakened dark squares, mainly the black squares, from which f4 could be easiest to use. Okay, so he mentioned one thing in there that I didn't. He talked about a c5 and an e5 break that Black had. Why isn't it reverting? There it goes. Okay, so let's see. When does Black have a c5 and e5 break? Not yet. We got the white dominant center. Okay, yeah, Black does have possibilities to break with these moves, but a neat thing Black did was he kept them in reserve. Let's see how long they exist. See, they're still there. They're still there. They're still there. You can still do c5 and e5. I never even discussed it. What Black did was fine. He just operated on the dark squares, and suddenly there came the weakness. So Black didn't have to. Okay, so let's see. F4. So N4 is right on. Got a little bit more than I did, and I'm glad when he catches stuff I missed. Good job. Okay. The one who has more space shouldn't trade pieces. Oh, wait. Yeah, I'm in the right place. The one who has more space shouldn't trade pieces. That is the common principle used in these positions. Aggressive pawn on d4 may become weaker on end games. Okay. About the moves. Okay, suggesting 19 rook ad1. Let's get to that. Where are we? Let's see. I'm not sure where we're at. Let's see. Yeah, I'll do it this way. Forward 38. Okay. forward. What that does is it takes me forward 38 half moves. Okay. For some reason I couldn't tell what when we were on. Okay. Rook AD1. Maybe white could have played f4 to avoid black to take f4 under control. It may seem crazy to open up the king side, but in my opinion, f4 doesn't weaken king safety much because there are not much pieces left. Besides, the king could be okay in the corner. All right. I did think about something along that line, but not exactly. What I was saying, I did think about this pawn in f4, and I thought of it in that the white king side was still possibly vulnerable. If black gets a rook, if the files open up and black gets a rook on one of these ranks, get these arrows drawn. Come on, arrows. Thank you. There's one. If black gets a rook on one of those ranks, his rook will be all the more potent. But I do agree with his assessment. It may not be that bad. But as I pointed out, white could have just sat on the position and black wouldn't have won. Okay, he got impatient and tried to force winning chances. So you know the trick is to learn when not to do the winning chances, and this was one of them. Okay, so we've seen what he said there. Okay, in the corner. Now let's see. Next comment. Queen A5, exclam, bishop C3, queen G5. Let's get forward to that, because I did have some comments about that. Let's see. Queen A5, bishop C3, queen G5. Let's see, where am I? Okay. I really like this idea. White first gave one square for black pieces, and first bishop used the opportunity, but now also queen joins. Okay, Nh4 is from Finland. His English isn't perfect, but we understand what he's saying. So let's see. Yeah, just getting on the black squares was fine. We were in agreement about that. Okay. 29 bishop c3 is the next comment. Let's get to that. He didn't mention b4. Okay, bishop c3. Let's see. Now there was a good moment to play d5 that was tried on the next move. These are difficult things in chess sometimes. When you see some move you should have played just after you have played different idea, you become attached to the idea and you want to move it. Well, he's 100% right there. You have an idea and you just can't change your plan. The problem may be the opportunity is already gone, and you should change the plan. With d5, white could have opened up the lines and diagonals for his pieces. Okay, I was always talking about a potential d5, and I was always leaving that to independent analysis. How does black avoid lines getting opened? Well, one way is to surrender the occupation of d5 and try and close the position up. This bishop is blocked. Black's got the pawn blocked with his bishop. The bishop's not an ideal blockader of a passed pawn, but it'll suffice for now. This bishop's diagonal is opened up, but it doesn't have a lot to do. Let's see. If white wants to get anywhere, like I say, maybe we can go back to those plans of trying to trade pieces and win the bishop versus knight ending. That's the king side is still weak. Black may have to make some exchanges here, and I'm just gonna, I don't know, we'll just fiddle around here for a minute. I don't know if this, you don't want to play rook c3 here. You might run into bishop e5. Well, no, you wouldn't. That hangs the rook. Ugh. Okay. Let's see. Rook c3. How about knight d7? Let's improve this knight's position. I'm just trying to trade off, because that's what I was talking earlier. get down to a bishop versus knight ending and win it like Kashtan did. We're just seeing if this can happen. Does this give any chance? Can White force this? Well, hey, look, we got a mate threat. Now, this may or may not be a nuisance. I think just the fact that the white king is exposed in potential ending, as black keeps the queens on, I don't think white can win this. But again, you know, there's sometimes you have to admit, I'm not going to win this, okay? We always want to win our games, but sometimes you have to say, I'm not going to win this one, okay? All right, so let's get back to the main line. He made some good points there. I didn't even consider d5 at that point, but then again, I stopped considering it. I was leaving that to you guys. Okay, now 30 d5 is his next comment. Okay. It's difficult for me to know why this move was played. It certainly seems logical to get play on the center. Also, there's an appealing idea to play g5 and trap the queen. Probably the knight d5 pin that happened on the game seems so strong that the idea that Steadman wanted to play this and maybe didn't see how weak the white king is. Okay, good points. So, I mean, in retrospect, I could have said I see why it's difficult to see why this plays, simply because we know that black had a combination. I mean, I knew black had a combination going in, but I see the reason white did it, and I explained it. The reason why white did it is white's playing for a win, and he's doing it in a position he can't play for a win. That's the whole thing. So we can't always expect our opponents to play perfectly, and often they will undertake risks in order to try to force things. And when you see somebody try to force an issue, if he has weaknesses in his position, often these types of plans will blow up in his face, and black did a perfect job of demonstrating why. Okay, so N-fork is right on. Okay, so let's see. 42 Queen F3. Oh, all the way to move 42. There's, let's see, where were we? Let's get to 43. I could type in forward 26 and get there, but I'll just go forward. Or I could hit the arrow and go all the way to the end. He's move off, but that's okay. No, he's not. Okay, there is some beauty on this position because there are 4 kinds of mates, ways to mate the king. I only mentioned 2, D1 and E1. Well, yeah, if the king runs. Yeah, if I said black is threatening mates on D1 and H1, what does white do? So there are 4 ways to mate the king. H1, D1, but also G2 and E2 if the king moves. Yeah, of course. Well, I guess both this the king E1 stops the queen H1 mate. So he's right. I missed that. There's no defense. And king here stops this mate, but that loses the rook. So I guess I was saying if the rook moves, queen H1 is mate, and if you do anything else, queen H1 is mate. So king here, trying to run the king, just runs into queen E2 mate. So he was more precise than I. Well, wonderful game. David won. What can I say other than what I said? I also want to thank everyone for their time of looking at this. I never know how long a video is going to be until I make it. This one's 53 minutes. I've made longer for the league. If the position is interesting, I'll keep talking. I want to thank everyone who watches these and gives me the positive feedback that you do. It keeps me going. It's and as long as I can draw breath, I'm going to keep making these because it's a lot of fun. And hopefully, like I say, we raise everybody's level of play. Thanks again. I'd like to keep talking, but it's time to call it a day. All right. Thanks again. Bye now.